Good morning. My name is Philip Drew. I met Neil when we were babies together. I wish to express my gratitude to Neil, who last year asked my wife and me to assist at this celebration. It is an honour and a privilege. There will be a short cup of tea here at the conclusion of the service, and importantly, there is an after party or wake at Neil's baseball club rooms. You're all invited. The address is on the memorial bookmark, and if you're able to, please make your way to the baseball club rooms after our time here. On behalf of Neil's combined family, we extend a warm welcome to you all. Members of this family have put together a beautiful service, skillfully coordinated by Belinda, his daughter. Many people will be contributing. There will be fond memories, a time for reflection, maybe tears of sadness, but also tears of joy and laughter. We gather this morning to celebrate a wonderful life, to value Neil's love and friendship, his loyalty, his honesty and wisdom, his love of nature, his creativity, his sense of humour, and his courage. We remember with gratitude his gentle touch in our lives. And so we begin this final journey this morning with Neil's sister Dawn, who will remind us of his life story. Thank you, Dawn.
So thank you. Neil Malcolm Thomas was born on the 29th of April 1948 in East Malvern, the cherished firstborn child and only son of Nance and Jack Thomas. Neil was also the first much-loved grandchild for both sets of grandparents, Lila and Humphrey Thomas and Olive and Stanley Higgs, as well as the indulged first nephew for Nance and Jack's siblings, including Neil's two remaining aunts, Marge and Alison, neither of whom can be with us this morning. With an extreme housing shortage in baby boom post-war Melbourne, the house of Mum's cousin Rita at 29 Moore Street, Caulfield South, was divided in half to allow the young Thomas family some accommodation alongside another young family, the Drews. Neil immediately started his lifelong knack of being good at making friends, starting with Philip Drew, our celebrant today, first seen in photos sharing a bassinet with Neil at the age of around 3 months. Pam was born in 1950, followed by me, Dawn, in 1952. The family bought some land in the new suburb of Mount Waverley, and with Nance's brother as builder, started building a house at 9 Valley Road. The seeds were sown for a carefree childhood, cavorting with the large groups of kids in the neighbourhood, and Pam will provide some anecdotes of that period shortly. Neil attended Mount Waverley Primary School, where for some reason known only to himself, he preferred to be known as Neil, not Malcolm Thomas. So I'm not sure whether he would have loved the full title there today. He then moved on to the newly established Glen Waverley High School, which was temporarily located using post-war Nissan huts in Ashburton until the current school was built. Studying was not one of Neil's major passions. He often put a "Do not disturb, I'm studying" sign on his door to put Mum off the trail. This often meant he'd gone out the window and was doubtless telling the truth. He was studying something, just not his books. Typical of the boys in our family, he took a while for his body to mature. He decided to play baseball rather than cricket or football. Baseball was a lifelong love and started heaps of wonderful friendships for Neil. Many of you are here today. He started an apprenticeship as a printer, half-tone etcher, and began his working life. He got his licence in 1966 on his 18th birthday and got his first car soon after. While still living at home, Neil's night and weekend life really moved up several notches, up to this direction really. He revelled in some hoonish years with the boys in Heathmont and Ringwood. Some of you are here today, drinking and cavorting, playing baseball with weekends away with his mates. I don't know what you were doing, Philip, but, koala spotting or pig shooting or whatever it was. There was a time in Melbourne, this was a time in Melbourne when the first .05 laws and compulsory seatbelt laws were being considered but had not been brought in. Nance, our mother, remained alert but not alarmed until she heard the car engine stop outside Nine Valley Road, sometimes with Neil sleeping in the car for the night. Then she could relax. Neil's personality developed to the man we knew and loved. He had, as Philip says, an artistic and creative flair, loved collecting free stuff and finding a use for it. Like Mum's side of the family, he was always funny and witty, and from Dad's side he could extend this to the rather ribald humour, especially in male company. From Jack he also got his love of the shed, an earlier version of the man cave. Those of us who helped Neil with his most recent move to Alexandra Avenue will note that by that time he had elevated the man cave to an extraordinary art form. Neil had a real knack for friendship, an enduring love of his chosen sport. In recent decades, it allowed him and Carol to travel the world, making more friends in faraway places. He even had a surprising close friendship with a French baseball opponent, Pascal, which was maintained largely through Google Translate. Pascal became Neil's French brother to distinguish him from Neil's local band of brothers. And I really liked the choice of the Brothers in Arms because I think it really signifies a lot of what's going to be celebrated here today. So basically, we'll hear a bit more about that both from Cameron and Peter in the next segment, about aspects of the brotherhood Neil had with many of his mates, even though he had no real brother of his own from birth. But back to our chronology. In 1970, Neil met and fell in love with Sally Lethbridge. She was a spunky nursing student at the time, living in an all-girl dorm, which Neil would find a way to sneak into against the rules. In February 1972, Neil and Sally married in style at Trinity Church in Kew, with the reception at the upmarket, newly built Leonda, where I recall I tasted the new vegetable broccoli for the first time. Firstborn, the beautiful Belinda, arrived in 1978, the beginning of the next generation for the Thomas side of the family, and that was followed by Jeremy in 1980 and then finally Russell in 1984. Neil's 3 children will provide a separate tribute. During a marriage spanning 25 years, Neil and Sally had many good times, setting up their first flat in Hawthorne, then buying their first home in Boronia and finally moving to Barossa Avenue in Vermont South. Neil progressed his love of carpentry and making things, as well as gardening, including cultivating the odd, less common garden but more enjoyable plant. He changed careers, working at Stanley Tools and Stramit, increasing his shed supplies and inheriting Jack's shed collection. Baseball remained a continuing love, with Neil's boys starting to play the sport too. After Neil and Sally's marriage ended, Neil set up a new house, garden and business at 1A Beaumont Street in Vermont South. Neil's design marketing business, Product Image Marketing, allowed him to link his various artistic, creative and practical skills and interests into a successful business and making more friends along the way. He developed some new female friendships too, and after a while he met Carol Bradford. In Carol, Neil found a woman who was very easy to love. Soon things were humming along. Carol and her girls, teenagers Rose and Emily, moved into Beaumont Street. Rose and Emily will give a separate tribute. Carol and Neil executed a fairy tale medieval wedding with yours truly walking down the aisle, spreading rose petals, and everyone entering into the spirit of what was a very happy occasion for all. Over time, Carol managed to soften some of Neil's edges, supporting him to develop his more spiritual side. They enjoyed the property at Conwack, spending many weekends there, as well as travelling far and wide with baseball. Belinda and Jeremy and Russell, meanwhile, were shaping their own lives during this period. Neil watched on with great interest as Bea developed her career and met her soulmate Mark Colwell and daughter Georgie, and then extended their family further with their daughters Tilly and Ella. Neil loved spending time with them all. Neil also loved hearing about Jeremy's travels and exploits, linguistic, literary and otherwise, and really enjoyed the stint of working with Jem in his business. Neil was very proud of Russell's medical studies, with Dr. Russ now working and doing further study in emergency medicine at Canberra Base Hospital. And more recently, he enjoyed meeting and getting to know Russ's partner, Hannah Minahan. The more recent history of Neil, many of you are possibly more familiar with. Neil noticed he lost his grip on the baseball, and there followed a testing period for Neil and Carol. They decided eventually to close the business and move to a new, easier-to-manage home at Alexandra Avenue in Ferntree Gully. This became Neil's final project, which, as many of you will be aware, he approached with great gusto. Despite rapidly diminishing skills, he worked to design and execute, with the help of friends, family and neighbours, a staged redevelopment of the house and garden in its beautiful and peaceful location, looking up at One Tree Hill. Even the week before last, Neil managed to finalise AutoCAD plans for Carol's dream kitchen and the dry riverbed planned for the front garden, a lovely lasting legacy. Carol has done an exceptional job supporting Neil throughout this last year or so, helping Neil in every way possible, far beyond what most of us could have managed. Neil has had some other wonderful caregivers too, friends, family and staff, both at hospital and at home. And in particular, Emily has been able to help Carol with daily care for Neil. Thank you to all of you, you know who you are. Most recently, Em and her husband Kay have injected fun and chaos into the household with the birth of baby daughter Avni, a reassuring symbol of new life as well as the continuity of life. Carol's brother Alan Bradford will give a tribute to Neil with or on behalf of Carol, depending how she's coping at that point. And Alan has also been a huge support to Carol and to Neil in the various projects as well around the house. Neil loved remaining mobile, zipping around the property, inspecting progress, sometimes with a granddaughter or George the dog on board. Carol facilitated his wish to be able to remain in their home for as long as possible. She truly deserves not just our heartfelt acknowledgement and condolences, but also to be able to take some time to focus on replenishing herself after such a tough gig. Neil was incredibly accepting of his deteriorating health situation, retaining his wonderful sense of humour, a gleam in his eye, and a curiosity about people and knack for friendship. Many of you visited him in recent weeks and months, sharing a laugh, a joke and a glass of red. Neil extracted the best from his recent respite stint at Bethlehem Hospital, introducing any number of staff by name and country of birth. Neera from Nepal and Solomon from Ethiopia come to mind. I asked Neil at that time, "How's life?" And he replied emphatically, "I'm loving life." I also told my brother not to do anything silly whilst I was in France, but c'est la vie. We can't say about Neil, like the cute epitaph in the New York cemetery, 95 years of good health and now this. We all knew it was coming. What we can say is that Neil led a happy and fulfilled life in all its glory. Neil stands before you all today, inspiring you to always look on the bright side of life, to try to accept life's challenges and to extract as much joy as you can out of each day. Don't wait for a funeral to do that for yourself. Thank you and long life to you all.
Thank you, Dawn. That was tremendous. And now, two of Neil's granddaughters, Georgie and Tilly, have been working away drawing a picture for Pa, and they're going to now put that picture up on Neil's coffin. Well done, girls. Next we have some words, a short reading that most of us would be familiar with. They contain words and thoughts which were close to Neil's heart. So I'd invite Dan to come forward.
Good morning. It's an honor for me to read this poetry. I'm doing it on behalf of my husband, who is too emotional to read. Desiderata. Go placidly amidst the noise and haste, and remember what peace may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly. Listen to others, even the dull and ignorant, they too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain and bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself, especially do not feign affection, neither be critical about love. For in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield it in sudden misfortune. But do not distress yourself with imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the stars, the trees, and the stars. You have a right to be here, and whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt, the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be. And whatever your labors and aspirations in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace with your soul. With all its shame, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be careful, strive to be happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely, you, Neil.
Thank you. I'd like now to invite Pam, Neil's sister, to come forward to present our first tribute to Neil. Thank you.
Dawn and I have many early memories of Neil. Memories have come flooding back over the last few weeks in particular. Our childhood was fairly free roaming with little parental supervision in the weekends. When Dad built our house in Mount Waverley in the mid-50s, it was all unmade roads, no cars, no sewerage, milk delivered by horse and cart to our front gate, the occasional snake or horse over the back barbed wire fence, and Mount Waverley Shopping Centre had only one shop, Lambros's Milk Bar. It was like growing up in the country and was extremely communal. We could wander from one friend's house to another, and when a local family bought the first TV set, they would turn it out to face the street on warm summer nights, and all the kids of the neighbourhood would sit on the front grass and watch together.
Neil, Dawn and I loved exploring what has now become the Valley Road Reserve, climbing trees, crawling up drains, jumping into what we used to call quicksand, wading up streams filled with yabbies, which Neil would catch and put down our underpants. One of Neil's defining characteristics, which he inherited from our dad, was his zany, witty and sometimes wicked sense of humour. As our older brother, he ruled the roost, teaching us outrageous dirty ditties, which we didn't understand, but then he encouraged us to go out and recite them to Mum, with disastrous results for us. The words of that infamous ditty are still etched on my brain. Lady of Spain, I adore you. Pull down your pants and let me explore you. No wonder we got slapped. He loved listening to the Goons on the radio and was a terrific mimic of their ridiculous conversations and songs. And who, more recently, hasn't experienced his daily avalanche of joke emails, indiscriminately sent to friends and family? He had a strong creative streak and spent hours building impregnable forts, daring Dawn and I to try and storm it with our broken group of discarded soldiers. His school books were fantastically illustrated. Geography maps weren't just boring outlines, they were filled with pirate ships off the coast of Australia and men forced to walk the plank, being circled by sharks with huge teeth just waiting for them to jump into the surrounding sea. It won't surprise any of you to learn that Neil was an early collector. Some would say hoarder. He would roam the streets of early Mount Waverley, finding other people's discarded junk. Even an old TV set with no inner tube. All in order to furnish his cubby house, which Dad had built around the side of our own house in Valley Road. This cubby house was his early headquarters for a little band of close friends. Dawn and I had no idea what went on inside because it was secret boys' business and girls were not allowed inside. Probably an early start to Neil's lifelong knack of pulling friends together and having a very close relationship. He collected everything. His childhood bedroom ceiling was strung with dozens of model airplanes and his shelves were stuffed with all sorts of weird and wonderful treasures. He even collected lollies in little tins that we got for Christmas, and he'd bring them out to taunt us months later when we'd finished all of ours. More recently, when it came time to move to Ferntree Gully with Carol, I was totally stunned by his Aladdin's treasure trove of collected stuff under his house. His friend Kevin and I tried to help him work out a plan on what to keep, what to give away, what to discard. His rusty old tools were collector's items, displayed under his house like a curatorial exhibition. As a teenager, Neil loved the radical new music of the 60s. The Animals, the Kinks, the Stones. The first record he bought was the single The House of the Rising Sun, which he played endlessly on the family record player. He even gave us his favourite Stones LP for a Christmas present one year. We weren't too impressed at the time, but later got to really like it. Brother Neil, your early years with us may have left a lasting impression, but it is your final years and months where your courage and positive, indomitable spirit shone through, which will remain an inspiration to us all.
Thank you, Pam.